Welcome to the PHNX Wildcats podcast presented by Neutral. They're supporting this Territorial Cup week. Neutral vodka seltzers are made with real fruit juice, and the variety packs come in a variety of flavors. Head to neutralusa.com to find a store near you. Now, a man that is as synonymous with Arizona basketball as maybe anybody outside of the GOAT, Brian Jeffries, the great Ryan Hansen. Hello, Rhino. How you doing, buddy?
Mike, Luke, happy Thanksgiving week to you, and what a special week it's going to be. We've got basketball on Turkey Day, Territorial Cup. Come on. Can't get much better.
It doesn't get any better than this. So let's hop right into it. I believe that this is the most stable that Arizona basketball and Arizona football has been since you were roaming around in the mid to late 90s, my friend. Keep in mind, Lute Olson basically had it where every 4 years you were playing in a Final Four. And guess what? You sprinkled in a national championship there. Dick Tomey had it where you had a top 5 or a top 5 and a top 10 team in a 5-year run. Feels a little similar right now with Tommy Lloyd and what Jedd Fisch is doing.
Yeah, you look at 1994, arguably the best spring, or at least that first couple months in the history of Arizona football and basketball together. Fiesta Bowl run, Final Four run.
Right.
But then that 97, 98-ish run, right, where Cats win the title, make it to the Elite Eight, and then you've got the 98 football team that's arguably the greatest team that Arizona's put on the field. So you're right, stability, excitement, competing at the highest of levels, and boy, if you would have just taken that chunk of this audio, you would say stability, competing at the highest level, exciting to watch. That is truly Arizona football and Arizona basketball right now.
Right. And it also feels very sustainable. There's nothing fluky about it. I mean, obviously with Lute Olson, you got to see that up front. Lute Olson, one of the 10, 15 greatest coaches ever. And, with Dick Tomey, again, it wasn't not the success, obviously, that Lute had, but you knew that there was a steady foundation, a steady rudder. And it feels kind of the same way, knock on wood, with both of these guys.
Yeah, the continuity that we had for so many years with Coach Tomey and Coach Olson, you throw in what was going on with baseball and softball, and with the building itself, McHale was about as stable of an athletics department as you could find. But the two sports right now, with what Jedd and Tommy have built and what they both inherited, right? It's a little similar storyline of what Lute inherited.
Right.
Coach Tomey inherited a really decent program from Larry Smith, but there had been some challenges prior to that. So to build it of their own volition, in their own fashion, in their own way, to get us back to the pinnacle of athletics competition, it makes it that much sweeter.
Right. All right, let's talk about this Arizona team. First of all, we got to talk about the Duke game. Rhino, you were there front and center, obviously. Like any smart person, I was listening while I was watching. All right. Just talk us through the day. How did it go? What were all your thoughts?
Well, I've seen my fair share of Arizona basketball games away from McHale Center, either be it neutral court in the Bahamas, in New York, in Maui, in the Great Alaska Shootout when it was actually still a thing, NCAA tournament runs, and road games, right? So when I factor in road game environments, there really are only two that separate themselves, and it's Cameron Indoor and Fog Allen. Those are two completely in their own stratosphere in regards to historical significance to the sport. Two teams that are incredibly historically important in Duke and Kansas. And of course, Arizona winning in 2003 and this win against Duke this year are my two, and kind of interchangeable, could be my two favorite non-conference road wins of my career.
That second half against Kansas, to me, is the most dominant half considering the time and place that I've ever seen from Arizona basketball. There's been a lot of those moments where Salim Stoudemire obviously probably has the apex half of his career, and he had a lot of those, obviously. That one, though, was just how did that compare to what you saw against Duke?
Well, it was two different games, right? Yeah. Arizona led for 30 plus minutes in Cameron Indoor, albeit it was close and nip and tuck, but I never felt Arizona was really in jeopardy, even when Duke took the lead late. The Kansas game, we were getting blown out at halftime.
Right.
They retired Paul Pierce's jersey at halftime of that game. So you want to talk about a fevered pitch. It was everything was kind of directed towards a huge Kansas win. So to completely turn that around and literally silence Fog Allen. It was crickets were louder than the fans at Fog Allen. That was pretty incredible to do. But then to go into Duke this year, early in the year, you felt good about Arizona, maybe not great just yet because you weren't sure what you were going to get. You've got arguably the best player in the country in Kyle Filipowski. You know, the Cameron Crazies were off the charts. And to literally have the lead for 30-plus minutes, and Duke only had it for, 2.5, 3 minutes?
Yeah.
I loved that level of sustainable excellence.
Right. All right, let's talk about this year's team. The thing that really sticks out to me, Rhino, is the defensive flexibility that you have now. And this is with all due respect. Kirk Kriisa, Courtney Ramey did some very good things, no doubt. But it's a lot different now when Tommy Lloyd can employ Kylin Boswell, Jaden Bradley coming off the bench, obviously, Pelle Larsson, who we're going to talk about in depth, KJ Lewis, Caleb Love. You can really take some chances. You can really extend that defense just with that kind of length, that strength, and that athleticism that you have there.
You really don't have a weak link in that group, right? Some of them may be better defenders than other, but in a lot of cases, you can switch every perimeter dribble handoff or ball screen with that group and not go, oh no, if so-and-so gets matched up on Arizona's player, we're in trouble.
Right.
In a lot of cases, you would say Arizona, unless they play a very, very big front line that has guys that can play inside and out, but even then, Arizona did a great job of switching on Kyle Filipowski with Kylin Boswell, with Jaden Bradley, because of the other pieces. This is I don't want to get too far excited, but I'm
Do it, Ryan.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay,
yes.
I can back the A here
yes.
and really get excited about Arizona defensively. You take the perimeter ball pressure that they can provide, the strength that they have. Kylin Boswell at the top, as Reggie Geary has pointed out, he's called it the tip of the spear, which I loved how he coined that early on in this year's team. You take that group, and then you look at what Keshad Johnson can do, and he can play and defend all 5 spots.
Right.
And then you've got rim protection with Oumar. You've got Mo Krivas, who – holy cow, he was out in passing lanes on Sunday afternoon. Again, maybe won't see that in the high-level games, but point being is you really don't have a significant drop-off at almost any of these positions. That top 8 rotation maybe as solid defensively as Arizona's had in, I don't want to say forever. Let's not get too carried away, but in a long time.
How about 03 when you could bring Hassan, when you could bring Andre Iguodala off the bench? This is to me a little bit like that. And again, it's 03 had the second most years where you were ranked, or I think second most weeks you were ranked number 1, if I'm not mistaken. It was something like 7 weeks or something like that. So it was obviously an awesome team. But you checked off every box. You had Jason Gardner, you had Salim, you had Luke Walton. Excuse me, you had Ricky Anderson, you had Channing Frye, and then you bring in that little athleticism off the bench there with Hassan, with Andre Iguodala. There's a lot of that this year where you got Kylin Boswell, you got Caleb Love, you've got Keshad Johnson, you've got Oumar Ballo, Pelle Larsson, and none. Oh, by the way, here comes KJ Lewis, Jaden Bradley, and Mo Krivas off the bench. There's no dead weight at all in that rotation there, Rhino.
That's a pretty good comparison to 03 and the ability to defend at all 5 spots. Again, not hide guys, not feel like, and again, no disrespect to Kerr or to Azulis, but last year you had to strategically find ways to not get beat with those 2 guys and who they were guarding. Well, what kind of stinks in college basketball for us last year is it was the point guard and the 4-man, which are sometimes in a 4-man in college basketball, you could be defending a big, you could be defending a small, it's interchangeable. That makes it tough if you have a weak link at the 4 spot defensively. Arizona does not have that this year, be it Keshad or Pelle defending. And I would love to dive in more to Pelle and what he's doing, and we'll do that. But Arizona's balance defensively, we'll talk about their balance offensively because I got a stat for you. But the balance defensively is just very special right now.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Pelle Larsson because, Rhino, that's why you're the man, because that's where I was going to go next. Pelle Larsson, you could tell from day one, even when he would struggle, Tommy Lloyd, who has been pretty he's been pretty right on most of his predictions. He said, last year, he said, I expect Pelle Larsson to be in consideration for the defensive player of the year in the conference Maybe it was a year early, but right now, Rhino, this is apex Pelle Larsson. Defensively, you had the stat the other day where I think he's drawn 16 fouls or something when I was listening. Talk about what you've seen from Pelle out there.
Yeah, he's playing at an all-time high from a defensive standpoint. I think his offensive numbers are exceptionally efficient.
Right.
But what stands out to me defensively, I mentioned this on the air, the three things I've seen from him, he is his effort, his intelligence, and his intensity defensively have led the team.
Right.
The guy's flying all over the place. From an effort standpoint, he is putting in tremendous effort. From an intelligence standpoint, he's anticipating plays. He was guarding for many possessions, one of the best players on the team in a couple different cases on Sunday. Either the big man he was switched off on, he was guarding Dejuan Gordon, who was their leading scorer interchangeably. But his ability to anticipate, and then the intensity in which he's playing. He's brought an emotional fire to Arizona defensively. I like the outburst that he's actually had because – he's kind of a laid-back guy.
Yeah,
he's a Southern California type personality.
Dude, great way of putting it,
right? But when he plays defense, and especially this year, it hasn't been that. How about his block shot on Sunday, where he used the principle of verticality to the perfect rule clarification, and then was still able to block the shot on a fast break. I love seeing that, and what's great about it for Arizona is the ability to guard multiple positions. He's not just a defensive stopper on a perimeter player.
Right.
He can defend that inside out, which I think will become very important as the season goes on. I love what Pelle has brought to the team.
And offensively, I think that he is buttressed very well by the players that they brought in. We're going to get to that in just a second, but let's just say last second, you want to go watch Rhino and the GOAT, but you don't know where to go. And you're thinking to yourself, man, where can I get tickets? Game Time, my friend. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And let's see here. Let's just say you're like Ryan Hansen and you get to fly all over the world. You got a really cool job with Bon Voyage. And you know what? You're saying, I want to do that, but I also want to get some cool floors in the meantime. That's where Empire Flooring comes in. How about that for a segue right there, Rhino? I feel very good about that one. Empire Flooring. Check it out. Here's the deal. Empire today, you can get they do all the stuff for you. Schedule a free in-home estimate. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHNX for details. All right. The one thing about Rhino. Yeah, although you did drop a 3 on Reggie Geary, so let's one time, baby. Yeah, I would hold on to that though. Allen Iverson only crossed over Michael Jordan one time. Guess what? We still talk about it. Right. The one thing with Pelle is a very good finisher around the hoop. Pelle is a good shooter. Pelle's not a great ball handler. That just kind of is what it is at this point. But now, when you have Kylin Boswell running, when you have Caleb Love out there, when you have Jaden Bradley, he can become that force multiplier, for lack of a better term, in that he can do what he does best. And he's not asked to do things necessarily that he can't do. I love with these ball handlers and him. That's another reason that I think you're seeing the best Pelle. Yeah, when you look at what Tommy did in the offseason, and I'm stealing this from some announcers that I heard recently talk about it, and I think they were right on point. Tommy clearly upgraded the roster, but he upgraded the roster with the right players, with players that mesh with Oumar, with Pelle, with Kylin Boswell in such a way where it wasn't just a talent upgrade or a size upgrade or athleticism. It was key parts that play off of the strengths of these other players. So Pelle should not be asked to be a playmaker off of this group necessarily when like shot clock's down. Hey, Pelle, you got to go create a shot for yourself or someone else. He could be the beneficiary of that. I think he's clearly not, as you mentioned, the Arizona's best ball handler. Well, let's not put him in those positions to be, the best ball handler or the only ball handler in this situation. I think he's taking better shots. I think his shot looks better. The perimeter jumper looks cleaner. It looks better. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. Did they overhaul the shot to a certain extent? Because it looks different, Rhino.
I don't know if that was Tommy, if that was Pella, what it was in the offseason, but it definitely looks cleaner. I think the results are proving that out. As long as, and this goes for everybody, Pella continues to recognize what a great shot is. His shot selection, I think, will be critical.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the shot selection I think is critical there, Rhino. Like you said, as long as that continues to happen with everybody, this is a really, really good team. Speaking of shot selection, let's talk Caleb Love. What I loved about Caleb Love, pardon the pun, is that he didn't have his greatest game against North Carolina against Duke. But guess what? He wanted all of those free throws at the end. He wanted the ball. That is something that last year's team didn't necessarily have an abundance of. I felt that Caleb Love would have made 30 straight free throws in those situations.
Well, I feel like you take the free throws, the half court shot.
Rhino just cut out, but we will hold on. Rhino's going to come out. Rhino going to come back in. We got this one. Don't worry. This is called live streaming for a reason right here. All right, Rhino. Let's see. All right. Well, I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk while Rhino gets this all figured out. And you know what? There's probably no better time to actually get a read in here than maybe BetMGM. All right. Now you said it yourself, Mike. Where can I get the best stuff going on? BetMGM. Sign up for BetMGM. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app of at least $10. You will receive $200 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes for details. Okay, now, and my BetMGM parlay pick is going to be take Arizona to beat ASU and take the under. All right, now, Ryan Hansen playing hard to get. Hello, Rhino. You're back.
Wow. Tough man to get a hold of, I guess. So where we left off, Caleb Love, right? Yeah. And so what I was trying to articulate to you is I think Caleb's shot selection for the Wildcat fan is going to drive you nuts in certain cases, but then he will make some of those and you'll think it's the greatest thing ever, like the end of the first half at Duke. It's the other things that he's doing. Like you said, got ice in his veins for free throw shooting, wants the ball at the end of the game, and I feel very confident about his ability to knock down shots. How about this? He's averaging the highest assist to turnover ratio in his career. 24 assists, 9 turnovers. And some of the turnovers at Duke were a little like head scratching, just dribbling off his foot, etc. But if you look back at his career, unfortunately, that is somewhat of who Caleb is. What I like is that he's doing all the other things, averaging the most rebounds in his career. Granted, it's only 5 games in, but most rebounds and best assist to turnover ratio. That to me is the Tommy Lloyd factor of how can you elevate yourself, and it's not about how can I score more.
Right, because everybody knows he can score the ball. It's about becoming more efficient, being able to do the other things out there because, I mean, he's like anybody else. He wants to play in the NBA. You've got to be able to do other things than just score and become more efficient. We talked about it before the season. I'd like to see his field goal percentage in the low 40s. Again, he's never going to be the Salim where you're shooting 58% from 3 and 52%, but get into the low 40s because with everything else that he can do out there, then you become more enticing, I think, to NBA folks as well, Rhino.
Yeah, and I think he needs to continue to be a threat to score at all 3 levels. If he starts falling in love with the 3 and that's where he lives, and we saw a glimpse of it, to be nitpicky, we saw a glimpse of it in the first half of the UT Arlington game where he had coming off of the great game against Belmont where he scored at all 3 levels, got to his floater, got to the layup line, and then hit threes. He kind of did a heat check early, like, okay, now it's time to start launching because this is my weekend. That's what you and I would do at the rec center. We don't need to see that out of Caleb Love. I want to see him score at all 3 levels, utilize the pick and roll. He's got a great float game in the middle of the lane. He can finish it with contact. He's trying to dunk things at the rim, which I love the intensity there. Be that multi-dimensional scoring threat for the Wildcats and producer. That will be the best version of Caleb.
All right, Keshad Johnson. Arizona had nobody like Keshad Johnson in Tommy Lloyd's first 2 years, as successful, obviously. And again, we keep talking about the first 2 years. It's very important to know that he was 61-11. I mean, he obviously, so we're nitpicking. There's been nobody like Keshad Johnson, though, and that you can go, depending on the screen, depending on the pick and roll, I feel comfortable with him on a point. Now, again, I don't want him guarding a point the whole game, obviously, but in a switch, he's fine. He brings that strength, that athleticism, and just by running the court, he's getting 10 extra points a game, Rhino.
Yeah, the Wildcats are thrilled because of his versatility on the defensive end. That it's his offense is not going to replace what Azuolas Tubelis gave us, and
Right.
that's okay. Like, again, filling a role that for the betterment of the team might actually be where Keshad defensively can guard all 5 positions. You put him in those pick and roll, pick and pop situations where he's guarding the big that's setting that screen. You can do so many different things because of Keshad's ability to move laterally. He can get beat and get caught up on a play defensively because of his athleticism and leaping ability. I think he'll get those shots in transition. The one question mark for me is offensively, as teams start to scout him and sag off of him. We saw it in the first half of the Arlington game. They were willing to let Keshad have jump shots,
right,
and live with whatever happened. Well, after his third 3 in the first half, they kind of started to say, maybe that's not our best option. But coming into the game, Keshad was 1 for 8 from beyond the arc. So statistically, it made sense to live with him shooting from the perimeter versus Oumar or Mo getting post touches in the lane. I'll be interested to see if more teams start to do that and are willing to more for the course of a 40-minute game, sag off and let Keshad try to beat you. So can he be consistent? Can he make plays that might not just be hitting a 3? You've got to be, more versatile than just knocking down jumpers.
He's splitting time so far this season, and he's going to, but man, Mo Krivas is going to be a problem. Mo Krivas
be a problem?
I mean, he already is. You're correct. Mo Krivas feels like the guy that Gonzaga gets, plays him sparingly for the first year, and then he becomes an All-American for the next 3 years. He's something. There's no way that anybody could have expected this from what we've seen.
Yeah, I don't think so. Even Tommy will tell you, yeah, I knew this guy was good. He was great. But to be this good 5 games in, and that leads me to Arizona having 6 players average double figures would be uncharted territory for Arizona basketball. And all of the great years, all of the great players, I don't believe, and I looked back at the end of the season, Arizona has had 6 players average in double figures. A couple things have to happen. I don't think Arizona is going to average 99 points a game at the end of the season. So that will probably contract. But when you look at the 6 players, any one of them could go for 20, but most of them don't live there.
Yeah,
that's just not where they live. They live in the 12 to 13 point a night guy. And Mo Krivas is that guy too. Soft hands, catches almost everything. Great footwork. He's got a Dusan Ristic feel around the basket with both hands. That Euro finish that he can put the spin in English on the basketball in and around the rim. He's immovable on the offensive glass. Try to box him out. Good luck. How will he play against better athletes in the post?
Right.
Let's see how that goes. How he will play against a Zach Edey, who is 7'4", and he's 7'2". Those will be fun matchups and games for us to see. Can Mo Krivas deliver? But I think he will. I actually believe that by the end of the year, he may be a better option for us in the low post to throw the ball to than Oumar Ballo. Because I think he'll just get better.
Where I'm at with Oumar is this. And first of all, Oumar has drastically outperformed what I thought when he came in here. And again, this is because everybody needs a player like this. I thought that when Oumar came in, he would be kind of a Gene Edgerson type that, and again, every team needs somebody like that. So that's not besmirching Gene at all. He played a very important role, but come in, get some rebounds, be physical, have the bike knee pads, all of that stuff. He's a 15-6 guy, 15-7 guy. I never saw that, but I do think, and again, I could be wrong, but I think that this is kind of Oumar's max right here. Whereas Mo Krivas going to keep growing right in front of us.
And I think Mo Krivas' skill set, he's got more in his bag. He's got a higher ceiling offensively for more improvement. I think Mo Krivas is going to develop an 8-foot jumper. Look at how good Mo is at the free throw line.
Right.
So can he develop a face-up game that he doesn't necessarily currently have in the low block instead of just right shoulder, left shoulder options? Can he reverse pivot and take an 8-foot jumper? We don't really see that from Oumar. He's got the push shot in the lane
The
that
push
we've
shot's
seen,
great, right?
right? The shot put that he's been pretty effective
Yes.
with. But I think Mo's ability to enhance his post moves and go from just a low post scorer to a mid post threat and maybe even a high post threat, I think allows his ceiling for growth to be higher. But what he can do for Arizona right now is the offense doesn't change when Oumar Ballo goes to the bench.
Right.
And we have not been able to say that last year, where last year, if he went to the bench, it was like, okay, Azuolas in the post, how are we going to play off of this? We really will play very similarly when Mo's on the floor from a low post, duck ins, pick and rolls options. I think we can play very similar.
I think honestly, Rhino, I think you're right. I can think of one team that had 5 double-digit scores in obviously 01. But that's it.
Yeah, there may have been one other one. Even the 88 team that was exceptionally balanced, Craig McMillan was only a 7-point per game scorer, and the other 4 were double digits. I think 03 had 5 double-digit scores.
Yeah,
Hassan and Andre were right in there. So that could be it. But the balance of this squad is wild. And again, even if it doesn't end up becoming a fact where at the end of the year, 6 double-digit scores on average, we know the threats and the abilities of what these guys can produce. That's what makes you so excited. Defensively, their versatility, it carries through offensively as well.
All right, let's say you're looking at Ryan Hansen and you're like, man, he's got a great job. He's got a great gig, got a great family. He hit the lottery. All right, maybe Arizona lottery can help you live a little bit closer to like Ryan Hansen. Go out and buy your holiday scratchers today. Scratchers start at just $1. Top prizes up to $500,000. You'll thank me later if you win. Maybe give me some of your money. All right, KJ Lewis. I watched KJ Lewis a lot in high school, and I never understood why he wasn't ranked higher. I talked about this with Shear for 2 straight years. To me, that's what a 5-star shooting guard in high school is supposed to look like. That to me is a little bit where the comparison of the 03 team comes in, and that you have this specimen, kind of like a Hassan Adams, different game, obviously, that can come in, get you 9 rebounds, can come in, dunk, block shots. Rhino, this dude is not, and again, knock on wood, this dude's not going to be here a long time. This is a special player.
Yeah, I think what the comparisons directly draw to is his ability and willingness to defend and do the little things. Like you said, hit the glass, block shots, be an enforcer defensively. And again, that's what makes Arizona intriguing to me, is not just those starting 5, not just the 6 that are averaging double figures, but what KJ brings to the table, and his evolution as a player to get himself to the NBA. He's going to have to elevate the offense to a point where his defensive skill set is currently. And I'm not saying it's not there. Some of it just might be opportunities. With this team, he's not going to get as many touches and as many looks offensively, but you can tell it's maybe not as refined as it will be. I love, though, his intensity, his effort off the bench. You're going to get, if he's on the floor for 5 minutes, it's going to be hair on fire 5 minutes. If he gets 20 minutes of action, he's going to give it to you for every minute, every second of those 20 minutes. That's invaluable. He's going to make plays for Arizona out of sheer effort and hustle that you need off the bench, but then he's going to make plays for you because of skills too. And that's a unique combination for a player. I think that's why you and many get so excited about his long-term potential of an NBA player, because he's got the physical tool set, but there's a mental edge to him as well. And I didn't mind the technical. I
didn't mind it either.
To be honest, I kind of liked it because he was done with that. That opposing player had been in his ear all game. You were on the court or watching it closely, there was a lot of chatter. I kind of like Arizona's edge. Arizona, KJ Lewis is that guy. Caleb Love is a little bit of that guy. Kylin Boswell's got a little bit of nasty streak in him. I like that Arizona has that. They need that. They don't need Mr. Nice Guy, but they don't need boiling over the top either that we've had in the past. And that you have to balance those two things.
A lot of the great Arizona teams too, and again, Lute could obviously, when he needed to, but they would have guys that would self-police the team. I mean, Miles Simon obviously goes without saying. We talked about 01, Jason Gardner, kind of that dude. You've got, like you said, that's a great point. You've got a lot of different players right there that will bring out, or they can be the bad guy. So Tommy Lloyd doesn't necessarily need to be the bad guy at times.
Yeah, I would point to two guys in particular that I think are the true leaders of this team. I think it's Kylan and Pelle. I think those two guys will set the tone. They will rein people in. They're not afraid to get into somebody's face, like you said. And boy, you know your Arizona basketball, Mike. We know this because every time we've talked, we relish in each other's knowledge and passion for Arizona basketball. Miles Simon, greatest leader of Arizona basketball, period. Not just because we won the title, but watching that guy in practice. He would take the scout team and win over and over and over if coach put him on the scout team because of his leadership ability. Not saying Kylan or Pelle are anywhere near that just yet, but in this year's team, that self-policing is important for sustained, continuous success. That coach in your ear all season long, we don't need that to wear people down over the course of 31 games. That's why you need voices, you need balance, you need depth, not just for scoring and rebounding, but for this very thing too, the off-court stuff.
Speaking of Miles, just briefly, people ask me that didn't see him. I always say, and again, he's not the best player in school history. I'm not saying that. I mean, he's up there, but he's not the best. He, to me, is the Michael Jordan, though, of Arizona basketball, in that he was the dude. He was the leader. He was the guy. Give him the ball. He's going to demand everything of you. He'll go through it himself. Just maybe as fierce a competitor as I've ever seen at Arizona. And again, I'm not trying to compare him to Michael Jordan. I'm just talking from a competitive factor. It was something that I haven't seen since then, and there's been a lot of great leaders.
Yep, you're absolutely right. That goes right into practice. Every drill he was playing at the highest level to win,
right? Because
he loved winning, but I think he hated losing more than he loved winning. And I think that's a difference in him and a lot of guys. Hey, I love to win. I compete to win. The guys that absolutely cannot stand losing, it breaks you if you lose. That's the competitive spirit Miles had. Boy, could we all use a little bit of that.
All right. Now, Kylin Boswell, you mentioned. When Kylin Boswell is a fascinating guy because he doesn't have a traditional basketball point guard body per se. He doesn't have the Jason Terry, the long, lean arms, and but is it just me, or does he look athletically at a different level this season? And from a skill perspective, I get freshman to sophomore, but Rhino, he just looks so much more dynamic, and he looked good last year, but he's definitely taken that up a couple notches.
Yeah, I think physically he's grown up, right? Yeah. I think he's a man now, and we will not cite his age. I will not fall into that trap that every announcer does. Right. So physically, I think he has improved himself from a physicality standpoint. What's interesting about him is, let's take you back to John Wooden. John Wooden wouldn't necessarily recruit the best athletes. He would coach and teach change of speed, change of direction. It was about being quick, not in a hurry. These are like little quips that Wooden was all about. So I think Kylin understands that. He's not going to blow past you time and again because he's just got that first quick step. Sean Elliott just going to beat you off the bounce because it's physically quick. Right, Mike D, even better example of that. I think Kylin understands how to change pace, change direction, utilize step backs and angles to create openings for him, either in jump shots, threes, or getting to the rim. I think he's a lot more intelligent of a basketball player for his own skill set than maybe people give him credit for. And how about you and I had a conversation in the offseason on this very podcast about, is Arizona going to have outside shooting?
All right.
Look at what this man is doing.
And
it's not just these 5 games, right? Take you back 11 games. The guy it's a flamethrower right now. Can he sustain it for the course of the season? This guy's not shooting 68%.
He feels 40% though.
But he feels 40%. He
He
feels 42 to 44 actually to me. And I think the key for him, I go back to this time and again. Shot selection. He took a horrible shot in the first half against UT Arlington. Early clock, dribble, Harlem Globetrotters, step back, had not made a shot yet. He was already doing a heat check.
Right.
Understanding yourself and when it's time for the heat check and growing into that, what's a great shot for yourself. He's pretty close. He's really elevated that part of his game. More of that is going to be important. Teams are going to start defending him differently because of the ability to shoot.
Right.
What I'm hopeful for is that gives Caleb Love wide open standstill threes.
Right.
And Pelle Larsson, wide open standstill threes, because you have to attract so much defensive attention to Kylan. I've been very, very impressed with Boswell.
Speaking of which, I refereed a basketball game about 3 months ago, and somebody we just talked about was in that game. Michael Dickerson.
Wow. I refereed my fair share of Michael Dickerson because I repped every practice. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. Here's what's amazing. He can still dunk flat-footed. And again, the most unassuming guy, and again, everybody out there was younger, so a lot of people didn't know who he was. So I told somebody, and then they look him up, and the guy goes up to him and he says, "Do you know Kobe Bryant? Did you play against Kobe Bryant?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "How'd you do?" And he said, "Well, that was my career high my second year. I had 32 points against him." And like everybody, and again, I don't know if he's still in town or not, but I reffed a couple of his games, and I thought of you when I saw him. It's cool.
That's great stuff. Mike D. There's a few guys, unfortunately, that don't get the praise and attention.
He's at the top of the list.
Historically, he's there. Chris Mills is there. Ben Davis is there.
Yeah.
Those are probably my three all-timers that don't get the love that they deserve.
Those are my three as well. All right, now let's get a little bit of a preview of the upcoming games, and then we'll sign off. But first, Desert Financial Credit Union. When you open a free account checking online today, get $200 in bonuses. Get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200. They are about the community. They are people like Ryan Hansen. They are out and amongst the community. Be like them. Check it out. By the way, Rhino, let's talk a little bit about what your endeavors are. I was remiss in that. What is Ryan Hansen up to? How can you help the folks out there?
If you are looking for a vacation, I'm your guy. Bon Voyage Travel here locally. Been in business 47 years. We have people that have been all over the world and can send you all over the world. In fact, I think since the last time I was on with you,
where have you been?
I was in Hong Kong and Vietnam actually, and had a great cruise experience. What a unique, special part of the world.
Right, for sure. Okay, so how can they get in contact?
Best place is our website, bvtravel.com. So B as in Bon, V as in Voyage, Travel, bvtravel.com.
Okay, now looking ahead here, I'm intrigued because Michigan State, I've watched them quite a few times. Listen, they haven't done a ton for me so far this year, but it's still Tom Izzo. It's still a tough team. That's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, you got Zach Edey and Purdue. And then Alabama is the one that I'm really interested in because Alabama is the one that can bring athletes at you. That's the one I'm curious to see because I think Arizona, and again, could lose these games. I think Arizona is going to match up just fine with slower teams, for lack of a better term. I'm curious to see Arizona against length and athleticism. What do you think about those three games coming up?
I'm very excited. What a gauntlet Arizona has set up here. Tommy Lloyd, not afraid. And now that you've won at Duke, you want more.
Yeah.
You're maybe not as gun shy a little bit about playing these top teams. First of all, you said it right. Tom Izzo, one of the greats. Yep. Do not sleep on Michigan State. If you're a basketball fan, you're looking at Thursday's game going, they lost to James Madison at home. We have a common opponent. Arizona beat Duke, at right. Duke, and they lost on a neutral court. Do not sleep on their ability to clog up the paint, their ability right. to be big, to defend. The stats don't get lured into. These guys can't shoot, and they're not as good rebounding as they have been historically. It's Tom Izzo, for crying out loud. This guy puts football helmets on guys and
right.
shoulder pads for rebounding practice.
Right.
That is what he does. So I think Thursday, understanding who Michigan State will ultimately be at the end of the year will be a very tough test because of that physicality
right.
and their ability to historically do things in the paint that most teams can't. exacerbating it out, I am intrigued with the Alabama matchup. On KenPom.com right now, Alabama, #1 rated offensive team for efficiency in the country. So can Arizona handle a team of that elite level offense and maybe more balanced? Duke had some great individual talent.
Right.
Collectively, they're not there yet. Their freshmen have not advanced yet. Alabama, I think, has some different, as you and I like to talk, they got dudes.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of dudes from a size, athleticism, and length standpoint. I think that could be one of the biggest tests. If you're looking at rankings, you'd probably say, well, what about Purdue, who looked actually pretty good yesterday in the Maui Invitational? I think better and more athletic than I anticipated. But, boy, some tests for Arizona that are going to really show us weaknesses. And that's what I'm kind of looking forward to. Right. Do I want Arizona to win every game? Of course I do. Would I be okay if we lost one of those because we need to learn and be exposed a little bit? I'm okay with being exposed. I want to win and be exposed, of course. But those games give different feel, different look, different opponents.
Right. And there was one last thing I want to talk about with you with the Arizona and the Big 12. But first, last read right here. I was able to knock 2 reads off when Ryan Hansen disappeared. Rhino and I were thinking about that ahead of time. Last one, though. Drink Wink. Available in either 2.5 milligrams or 5 milligram cans. You can get Wink right here at Arizona. Look for Wink at all your Sunday Goods dispensaries in the Valley and Botanica in Tucson. You can also save money online by going to Drink Wink and use promo code PHNX for 20% off a wink of seltzer with some THC. Okay, now, Arizona, the reason I'm excited about the Big 12 is this. I grew up in the 90s, obviously, and I've always felt that the Pac-10, at the time, was underrated because we've talked about it before. The only team in the Pac-10 Lute Olson era that I don't want to say feared, that's not the right word because you never really feared, were those Jim Herrick UCLA teams, because I thought that they maybe even had a wink more talent, and Herrick wasn't quite the coach that Lute was, but he was very formidable. Stanford was always really, really good, obviously, but I always felt that Arizona had better players. Stanford, I think, was so much of a Montgomery machine, but he had good players. But then you always had a Cal or an Oregon or a USC it was a good era. We're not in that era anymore. And you look at it, and there are so many schools that, and again, watch Arizona lose to one of these schools, but there's so many schools that just aren't good. Washington State, Washington, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, ASU. I'm not that I need to be rejuvenated, but Rhino, I'm ecstatic to go into the Big 12 and you're going to get to see this front row, obviously, where every game is going to be a big game. The crowds are going to be packed. You're going to be playing the Kansases, the Kansas States, the TCUs, the Iowa States. I'm excited, man. I'm ready to go. I'm going to miss the pack, but I'm ready to go on to a new thing.
I am as well. And basketball matters in the Big 12. In fact, it might be the matter, capital T. And I love that you touched on it. And it matters because when you go to Iowa State in a down year, Hilton Coliseum is sold out. When you go to Manhattan, Kansas, it's sold out. When you go to Baylor, you mentioned all those teams. How about Baylor and Houston?
Right.
You know, 2 teams, one that's won the national title and one that's been to the Final Four since Arizona. So it matters. They're playing at a super high level where I hate to say it, there's almost been an apathy for basketball in the league. As Arizona has traveled, they'll draw the largest attendance, but it won't be a sellout anymore in some of these places. It's going to be a sellout. Are you ready for this? When ASU travels to Iowa State, when ASU goes to Baylor, and that's what I love about it. So iron sharpens iron. So for Arizona, it's going to help the Wildcats become sharper, become deeper, be more competitive throughout the course of the season when they enter into Big 12 scheduling next year.
And nothing to me is more indicative of kind of the fall off in the pack as Stanford. I mean, you know it better than anybody. Maples, I mean, I remember I got to go to one game, and this was 98. This was the year after the title game, and they were chanting, when Michael Dickerson's shooting free throws, they're chanting out his ex-girlfriend's last name, or his first name. And it was just huge. I mean, it wasn't any venom behind it, but they were just trying to get in his mind a little bit. It was insane. You go to Maples now, whatever. I mean, it just feels like a totally, I feel like I was born in the 30s now when I try to compare it. it's just not the same thing that it used to be.
Did I make a right turn and I'm in the library on campus at Stanford, or is it Maples? You're
exactly.
Right. And how about the 96-97 season? Arizona wins the title.
Yeah.
But Cal and Stanford both in the Sweet 16 that year. And so you had not
Brevin Knight and Dion Cross backcourt.
Ooh.
How about that?
Impressive.
Yeah.
I kind of like you drawing on that. But that's what's exciting for sure on the horizon for Arizona, where teams coming in here are going to have high level coaching. That's another thing that you mentioned. You know, Mike Montgomery. I mean, say what you want about Herrick, he could recruit.
Right.
He could really, and he did a good job for them. Ben Howland would, help them, of course, get to Final Fours. But I'm like you, where I'm not saying that I won't be disappointed or like, oh, we're not going to go to UCLA every year. Of course I'm going to miss that. Do I miss the days of yore at Maples Pavilion?
Yeah.
Yes, but I will not shed a tear this year, I don't believe, for any of these games that we play on the road where I'm like, oh, this is our last chance to go to Gill Coliseum. Am I really going to be disappointed about that? Probably not.
All right. He is the great Ryan Hansen. Again, Ryan, tell him one more time about Bon Voyage. Live like Ryan Hansen.
Live like me, travel the world, go to Bon Voyage. It's the best place to find us, bvtravel.com. And one more comment for you, brother. Back the A. This is the weekend to back the A like never before.
It really is, man. Dude, I'll be honest, man, this last week has just been a whirlwind. It's just and it's perfect for me because I get post-game show after post-game show after post-game show. We need more games. But Rhino, as always, really appreciate your time, my guy. It's always a pleasure. Always really look forward to talking to you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you.
Right. He's Ryan Hansen. I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.